Let's break down what's happening at Barstool right now. Recently, an employee by the name of Ben Mintz was terminated at Barstool, and he works on, I believe, one of their podcasts. Dave Portnoy posted a video on Twitter saying, emergency press conference, Ben Mintz has left the building, explaining the situation. And apparently, all of this happened because Ben Mintz, a white, male, heterosexual, decided to say the N-word, not in reference to another black person, not as a use of a derogatory slur aimed at another individual, but reading the lyrics of a rap song. Let's hear it.
Okay, emergency press conference time. Bad news. This sucks. So today we had to fire Ben Mintz, the artist formerly known as Ben Mintz. It stems from his Wake Up with Mintzy. Ironically, finally got to do him live, and he was rapping lyrics to a rap song, reading the words off his phone. And he rapped a racial slur. He turned white as a ghost. You could tell instantly, he's like, oh my God, what did I do? It's like a Ron Burgundy moment. He read it. He knew he fucked up. He's been super apologetic, like in shambles, basically. And I think anybody who watched the clip was like, there's no way he meant to do that. He's just not the brightest bulb to ever come down the pipe. And he just screwed up, and he knew he screwed up. And there was no hatred behind it, no nothing. Still awful, but no.
Still awful. What's awful about that? You know, I hate this whole like tiptoe politically correct around the N-word thing when everybody and their mother is using it in rap songs and they're throwing it around so frivolously towards other people. I don't care. I don't think this is going to be the reclaiming of the N-word by white people, and white people are going to suddenly start running around saying the N-word. What I do think, though, is that you should not be fired from your job if you are saying the N-word in the context of a rap song. It makes no sense to me. You don't get to gatekeep language because of its historical significance, especially when you've repackaged the word and you're throwing it around using it for other people. So a white guy says the N-word in a rap song and he gets fired from his job. Are you kidding me? There should be no barriers around that sort of language, and it just is ridiculous for me to hear this story that you can get fired for saying a word in a rap song.
Not in my wildest dreams, I think I'd be sitting here being like, we had to fire Ben Mintz. Penn felt differently. Penn felt differently, and I'm stunned by it, and I've been fighting tooth and nail, as has Erica, as has Dan, to keep Ben and say this is the wrong decision. But Penn operates in a world that we don't operate in it. They are highly regulated by the government. They're issued licenses for gambling that just as easily as they're issued, they can be pulled back. And for anybody who has followed any of the states and Penn trying to get legalized and things like that, one thing's clear. A lot of people hate my guts.
Pause. You know what? One thing is clear to me. One thing is clear to me is there's not a black person behind the firing of this guy. And let me explain why. Because if you go on the street and you ask a bunch of black people, do you care if a white person says the N-word? I mean, almost unanimously, I think the answer you're going to get is, as long as it's not towards me. As long as you're not calling me an N-word. And there's actually a video of this white guy going around and asking black people, like, do you care if a white person says the N-word? How do you feel about the N-word? And they literally just saying, as long as it's not about me. So I'm just confused as to where the outrage came from in this instance of this guy accidentally saying the N-word that led to his termination. I want to place my bet, since we're talking about gambling anyways, that a black person did not bring about the complaint that led to this man's firing. And just by and large, I feel like we got a white leftist behind this because they're the ones who are so ultra sensitive about the word when black people are saying, yo, as long as you don't call me that, we're not going to have a problem.
They fucking hate me. They hate Barstool. And they look for any lever, any excuse, anything to cause problems for us and pull the licenses. Penn is convinced. And they've been very clear, Penn, since they took over. It's a zero tolerance policy moving forward. You can't do stuff like this. And really, we haven't had an incident like this since they've taken over. And they believe.
We used to say the N-word all the time, but we haven't had an incident like this since they've bought us out, you know? Oh my
That's actually
gosh.
true. There's video of Portnoy saying the N-word that was floating around Twitter recently, or like a few years ago, like 2016, I think, was when it was dated. And so it's just kind of ironic that this has come full circle. But
I wonder in what context he was using it. Was
probably
it
a
also
similar
rap
one,
song?
honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think most white people who say the N-word would probably be using it in the context of a rap song and not calling somebody a hard R N-word.
There's a legitimate chance lots of the states would pull their licenses because of this. Penn's $1 billion company, multi-billion dollar company. Without their licenses, they are a $0 company. Investors, families, employees, thousands of people, they feel it's their job to protect all of this. And the only answer is to fire Ben Mintz.
Pause. Okay, now I recognize Dave Portnoy probably doesn't have much say in what is going on in the termination of this guy because, you know, he sold Barstool Sports to this larger entity, it seems. But people have been pissed. This is Penn Entertainment. Their stock has been dropping. Dave Portnoy tweeted out, there he is. That's Mintzy, which I guess is his way of ushering this man into martyrdom after he's been terminated from his job for doing absolutely nothing. And I want to put that absolutely nothing. No, like, oh, we know it's horrible and you shouldn't have said it, but it was an accident. No, he didn't do anything wrong. There's no accident. There's no infraction here. He didn't do anything. And I just find it hard to believe that, like, some guy saying the N-word on some small podcast that is associated with Barstool is going to get their $1 billion licenses snatched from them as a gambling entity. Just highly, highly doubt it. And even this article here from Outkick, it sort of expresses somewhere that might even be an infraction against or infringement on the First Amendment. So it wouldn't make sense for them to lose their license here. The term free speech gets thrown around a lot and is frankly often misapplied. It says employers can fire employees over speech, right? The First Amendment protects speech from government retaliation, which is what they were scared of. They're saying, we think we're going to get government retaliation because you said the N-word on this obscure podcast, which would be protected by the First Amendment. So it's fine that they fired him, right?
The next sentence there says, but if state governments pulled gambling licenses because of something said on a Barstool show, that would feel like a clear violation of the First Amendment.
Right. So he can't go and sue them and say, you can't fire me for saying the N-word, of course, because they can fire him for saying the N-word on this podcast. But their reasoning behind it, saying, oh, we're scared of government retaliation, that they're going to pull all of our licenses because of one utterance on a podcast, smells like BS to me.
So really if it's not that, if that's not the motivation, then what is, you know, if they're not genuinely worried about their licenses being revoked, is the smoke-filled rooms at Penn just filled with these woke ideologues? Is it ESG scores that they're worried about? Like, why would they be so intent on firing him for this innocuous offense, which, by the way, 91% of you, it's been going down slightly, but we did a poll in the chat. 91% of you agree that a white person saying the N-word in quoting rap lyrics is not a fireable offense. So it's common sense dictates that, you know, this would not be something that is worth firing someone over, yet Penn is doing it. So I guess the question is why, if it's not the revocation of their license that they're worried about.
Right. I'm thinking like a disgruntled employee complaining about it or something like that, and they're just like lobbying for this guy to get fired. Or maybe they're like, we don't need his podcast and we're spending too much money here. Let's use this as an excuse to get rid of this thing that we're funding. I don't know. This is just speculation. We're
I will say
speculating.
Though, like, you'd think they would look at the situation that we just saw with Bud Light. And hey, Barstool is a brand that's very much known for F you, F the man. We don't care. We're going to not be politically correct. We're going to call it like it is. It's the brand of the common man, Barstool. You're sitting at a Barstool next to the guy at the bar that you're having that kind of irreverent sort of conversation. And if 91% of people, at least for our you know, subjective or poll sample here,
right,
are saying, but if 91% of people agree that this is a silly, bad decision, then even from a financial standpoint, like you saw the stock, it's
Right.
tanking. Like it's not even in their financial interest to do that. And the same logic at play with Bud Light's partnership with Dylan Mulvaney. It's like, what is motivating you people to do this crazy stuff that seems to overlap with this, woke sensitivities, when like, just don't stick your hands in the parts of the marketplace that are governed by common sense people, not even necessarily conservative right-leaning people, but just common sense people. If you're going to try to impose all these crazy hypersensitive norms onto them, because what do you think is going to happen? Your stock's going to tank, and
Right.
they're going to not want to participate in your brand.
Maybe it's delusion. Maybe they truly think the utterance of the N-word on a podcast is like the worst thing you can possibly do, because they've been brainwashed into thinking that it's the worst thing that you could possibly do. Maybe they do truly believe that this is a win for justice, terminating this guy's employment. And I guess rendering him incapable of bringing in an income from this place anymore. It's just crazy. Wild that you could get fired for saying something like that. Just unbelievable. I was going to show you the clip, but I don't know if it will demonetize our YouTube channel for just even playing the clip of him saying this. He's quite literally just like reading off rap lyrics, and he says it, and you can tell he like immediately stumbles like, oh, like I said that, you can just see it register. But yeah, and he was right to have been worried about that utterance leaving his mouth because he's been terminated. So there we are. So stupid. And is a clear indication that if you've been a long time fan of Barstool Sports, that I guess due to being bought out by another company, they're no longer standing by any of the principles that they once stood for as a company. And it's not necessarily to blame Dave Portnoy. I know people have been attacking him, and he made this whole video on Twitter saying, I made the company to sell the company. That's why people make companies. That's why they're entrepreneurs or whatever. And he seems to be not responsible for this happening and doesn't seem to have much sway over this guy being fired or not. But that's the situation. So sucks for Ben Mintz. Hopefully somebody else snatches him up and they run with this narrative, because now would be a great time for his career to stand up and talk about free speech.